Hello. Let's jump right into it. This week has been interesting as always. I don't have too much to cover. I think I'm just gonna sort of make the rounds. This past week has been mostly map stuff. Like going in and out of Unreal, Maya, Substance Painter, and Photoshop mostly. And main reason why I think it's been hard to lock down a workflow that I like is because there's a couple things that I want to that I'm looking for when having like a modeling and texturing pipeline from all the other softwares to Unreal, and that's really flexibility and sort of speed. If I can do it quickly, if I can make changes quickly, that's really good. If I can retroactively update my geometry or my textures, um, that's really good too. And it's surprisingly not simple to kind of find the right pipeline. And I think that's mostly just because it's just there's so many different needs that people have in game development that and these programs are suited to sort of serve everyone's needs that it takes a minute to start to be able, at least for me, to kind of wrap my head around what I'm going to need in any given situation. And and it makes it so I need to sort of plan ahead and whatnot. So today I was sort of just staring at my computer screen for like a long time, and I felt like I I couldn't make a move because I just couldn't see far ahead enough in the future, and in terms of like how I want to address certain things, and I think I just kind of found myself at a gridlock. But I managed to squeeze out a few things today, and of course this week I spent a long time on the map. I've got kind of like a rotating light here. It rotates ever so slightly, and of course all these textures and the models themselves are a work in progress. Um, I wanted to add lights just because the scene is obviously lit, and I wanted to have some sort of you know reason for light to be appearing. And I haven't really figured out a way I want to portray these lights. I know there's like sort of fluorescent bulbs in there, so I kind of know what I'm going for, but I'm not sure what the material is going to be like on the actual light itself. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to accomplish a kind of a nice glow or a light and that's not too bright and kind of makes sense with all the actual baked lighting that's happening on the walls. So I guess I'm not sure how I'm going to address that, but I imported a big batch of meshes, and this is definitely one of them. I'll just bust open Maya just to kind of go through it, because essentially this whole map is and this thing I'm really happy about, this whole um, this sort of damaged wall, like someone like the Juggernaut or something just sort of smashed through it. This was a pretty big project. I hadn't really ever. Part of the reason why it's so big is because this hole encompasses 2 tiles, and so getting this to kind of go like that and be pretty seamless, and also be organized in a way that I can make changes later was a little difficult. but I'm happy with the result because each of these walls is it's one block basically. It's like one block slab, and that's the way I've been building it so that it's as modular modular as I can make it. Um, but of course, when it came to doing this, I wanted to take a different approach so that it sort of breaks up the fact that everything really is kind of just a square upon a square, or a cube rather. Like all these, just cube, 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 cube. And it may not seem uh, obvious at first, but you do sort of develop like a sensitivity to the pattern, nature of this. And I think a lot of games use assets like this, so that they can save on the system's, memory or GPU or whatever. Uh, and finding cool creative ways in breaking up that pattern is really it's actually really fun. It's kind of a cool creative type of puzzle because it's it's fun to do, and it kind of I like it, I think, because it forces me to think not just like an artist but also as like an engineer or something, or a technical person. I'm not just trying to make something that's aesthetically pleasing or something that's going to be a cool level design, but something that's actually going to be very performant when it's on an engine, or on a mobile device, compared to whatever, a console or something. But yeah, let's see. Let's open up Maya real quick and let's take a look at modular assets. So this is kind of the workflow that I've found myself most happy with, and that's basically having a series of meshes, creating a group that goes to Unreal and another group that goes to Substance. And this works for me because I can bake the ambient occlusion if I want to in Substance, and of course that doesn't always work, but that's that's available to me, and I take this to Substance so I can texture you know this whole collection of meshes at once. And the only reason I would do all of these at once is because I don't really need them to be on a single texture set. I want to include as much geometry as I can in a texture map, just because it's my understanding that it's more performant to have one texture call. Like it's better to have one 4K texture call than have four 512 by 512 texture calls. I'm not 100% that's true, but I'm taking the word of the people who are on more of the technical side and been doing this longer. So I try to cram in as much as I can, and as you can see, this is like kind of one thing that I thought of recently, which is to pack all of my UVs on only half of the texture map. That way, if I want to add more, meshes to this set of meshes, like for example, if I wanted to add maybe a more ornate handle to this door, or maybe add some something else to this door frame, um, or anything really, I will have the texture space to use that. Um, Another good example I think would be if I wanted to, create let's say I wanted to duplicate this and have another piece that's much more like visibly damaged. So much so that it wouldn't be enough to try to achieve that look in texturing. I would actually want to have like, you know, like more geometry on it, and then kind of like squeeze it, move things in, and create a more damaged look. Obviously spend more time on it, but yeah. And this is like kind of a centralized file in Maya that I keep a lot of stuff. This is like the first group of meshes that I had for the for this warehouse that I'm doing. This is sort of the starting hub, starting map. Let's see if I have a substance one for this. Do I? No, I don't. But I have one for this, I believe. Yeah. So same thing for this group. I had a group going to Unreal and a group going to Substance. I'm not sure if this is like the ideal workflow, and to be honest, like I have looked up some stuff online, and I have found some cool resources, but a lot of it is so open-ended and not specific, and again, it goes back to the fact that so many people have different needs in development that it's hard to find people kind of giving you direct answers about the workflow, because it's like there's so many softwares, there's so many blah blah blah. You get the idea. So yeah, taking all this stuff from Maya to Substance to Unreal has been fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. A lot of these textures need work. I didn't even get enough time to really dive into that, but that's definitely on my list. And of course, I've got this bad boy here, a little bit too high res for this game. I feel like it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb against the the nearest neighbor texture filtering on the garage door behind it. But this is kind of the direction I'm going with Trang, the rat, the mascot for this pizzeria and video arcade or casino or whatever, the setting of Milo. So definitely playing around with that. Of course, you see this guy over here, and I spawned him into the world just because like I wanted to. I don't remember. But yeah, I've hardly looked at any of the code this week. I really wanted to just buckle down and start rearranging this map and trying to get a look that I find is maybe a little bit more, just a little bit more desirable and interesting. I added this barrel. I don't believe this was here last week, and kind of made some adjustments to the particle effect on the smoke. And some barrels. I did this. I actually used a starter particle system from the starter content, and I adjusted it a little bit so I think it would so it would look more cool. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, so And this is basically just the impact effect when a bullet hits metal, and plays a nice little nice little sound effect. I'm pretty happy with. Particle systems are definitely something that is still very new to me. I'm picking up things as I go along though, and getting a little bit better at kind of having an expectation of what certain settings are going to do. I mean, if it seems like maybe it's a little bit easier than it is, but there's just a lot going on in particle systems, and there's a lot of freedom, which is the good part. But yeah, I mean they intersect with materials, which I think is probably the thing that's I've spent the least amount of time on. In fact, if you look at my map, there's not a single, and this is on purpose pretty much, there's not a single texture map that's not like a color map. You know, I have things like decals, you know, that are masked out, and I can sort of overlay them on other things to sort of break up, you know, seams and hard edges and whatnot. But everything else is basically strictly color, and the part of the reason for that, a big reason, is because I'm going for this retro look where there really wasn't, you know, roughness maps and normal maps and things like that, or in those old retro games, you know, PS1, PS2 era, maybe PS2, I don't know. But there was definitely, you know, diffuse or color maps, and most of the information, you know, the visual information you see is, with respect to textures, comes from color. And I'm thinking I might be messing around with that a little bit, because there's one thing, it doesn't have a map right now, but it did before I changed the texture. It's this little ball, and it's actually, let me change it right now just so we can see. Let's do something like that. So now it's got, you know, so it looks like some metallic, metallicity or metallicness, and you know, it's got a much lower roughness volume or value, and it's way too much for this game, but I think I might be able to get away with a little bit more control of, a little bit more freedom with, you know, using some of these modern things, but while still being faithful to more of a retro style. So I'm going to be looking into that. I mean, part of the reason why it was so desirable for me to just use color maps is because I started to realize really quickly what I'm up against in terms of my lack of development experience. So I just nixed everything but color stuff, and it's worked out really well so far. But I'm starting to think that maybe I will expand out a little bit and kind of push the bar a little bit. I also turned off my retro post effects thing for the most part. I mean, it's almost all of the post effects, you know, package thing that I got from Dayface is turned off, and it used to be turned on to, you know, lower the resolution of the game to make it look more pixely. It had a lot more, you know, texture warping, you know, that's kind of indicative of that time, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. It's like you know, the actual texture warp, and of course the vertex wobble. You can definitely see the texture warping here on the right side. I'm not even 100% sure why I'd want this to begin with, other than to kind of create a faithful, you know, old school type look. But this retro post effect thing was an incredible thing to start developing this game with, because it helped me really instantly kind of visualize, you know, what I had for this game and kind of what I wanted. And as I've moved away from it a little bit, I've kind of, you know, just sort of, I guess, moved on to some extent, you know, and sort of toned down some of those things, because now there's a bit more uniformity to the way, you know, my map is created and all my texture maps, and I've got some control, and there's basically the same texture resolution to all of my maps, pretty much, and it's starting to look pretty good without that sort of global, you know, downgrading the resolution that the retro post had. So yeah, and also light mass was a big part of this week, and I got to make a few changes here, but I dove back into that and just seeing what I could, what else I can learn about light baking and how I can make my game as performant as possible. And what you're looking at right now is basically the green just means that it's like an optimal light mass resolution, and I'll show you exactly what that is, because it's basically it's stored on a UV channel, and it basically bakes lighting in the same way that the textures are baked. Like, for example, this is a, you know, checker floor. The lighting is, and the checker floor is conforms to, you know, the UV channel, and then it's the game, when I import it, it gives me automatically makes a UV channel for me for the light map, and that's where the lighting gets baked when I hit, you know, build lighting. Uses that second UV channel, and it starts creating some lighting information. And the lighting is really, it's baked because it's really expensive to do lighting in real time on memory and GPU and whatnot. So being able to actually encode the lighting information into the map allows you to kind of have a, you know, lot less resource intensive stuff happening during runtime. And I can kind of, oh boy, what happened there? I have to look at that, some sort of weird lighting thing here. I think this is actually the post thing that I adjusted and didn't turn back. Let's change this back. Alright. Yeah. So I can focus on a lot of other things that are going to be a little bit more resource heavy, like, you know, physics simulations, like this little ball here, for instance. I'd like to have more things like that, and, you know, including these barrels. I'd like to have them roll around. In fact, I had one doing that not too long ago. Oh, and this is interesting actually. Like you can see that's the baked lighting, I believe. Yeah. So baked lighting isn't going to be too useful on this thing because it really they call it baked for a reason. But yeah, I've got a lot of work to do on these textures for sure, but it's coming along slowly but surely. And the zombies, I'm starting to miss the zombies, to be honest. I miss their faces. I had them kind of set up recently towards the beginning of this week to spawn, and I'd forget that they spawn, and they'd enter, and they would really scare the crap out of me. And that actually, even though I don't like being startled, like it made me feel good because that's good. People are gonna be scared. Zombies, show up behind them. Where is he going? Oh, interesting. Huh. Oh, wow. That's a very wide berth that they just gave those barrels. Why is that? Interesting. Let's see what how do I get my... Oh, there it is. Here's my nav mesh. Okay, so looks like these things are really playing a big role in just like I think it's the barrels anyway. Okay, so one of them is the ball. Maybe? Ah, yes. Okay, so let's change it so it can't affect navigation. Interesting. So yeah, I'm always surprised. Let's see if I can get these zombies in here. Oh, and they must be spawning over here. That's funny. That's what I'll do. I'll delete this. See if they spawn over here this time. Oh, and you hear the water droplets. Those are supposed to be coming from the ceiling. I mixed the water stuff that I had coming from the ceiling. I just got kind of frustrated and was just like, screw this thing. I'd been dabbling in it for a while, and I just can't figure out how to make it work. So I'm gonna revisit that once I've cooled down. Yeah, these zombies, the AI needs work. It's been a little nuts. They move towards the closest player, but it's not. It just doesn't work the right way yet. I have to introduce something, and I'm not exactly sure what. So I'm probably gonna look at all the materials that I have, tutorials and whatnot to maybe guide me in the right direction. Because just like Nazi zombies, I want to have a certain number of entry points that are, that you can defend. And I want them to be able to, come into the level and move in a dynamic way. Like, I wouldn't want people online to be able to, move a certain way to keep the zombies in a loop. Or, I don't want people to be able to exploit certain things, and there's a lot of things that have happened since I started building this for multiplayer, in which, like look at this. It's like, what is this? He's saying, oh, you're the closest person? No, you're the closest person. Oh, you're the closest person? No, you're the closest person. So it's, look at that. Just very, very strange behavior. But figure it out eventually. I wanted to kind of have a nice little chunk of time. This week was really a time for me to dive into the more design aspects, the sort of the visual character of the game, and I wanted to establish a tone and a setting for where the violence takes place, and I think it's starting to get to a place where I'm enjoying it. I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I think when people get to play this for the first time, I think it'll be fun. I want it to be kind of a nice mixture of horror and surreal, kind of comedy, just absurdist, surreal horror. That's my dream. People play this game, and also don't get too scared. I don't want to have jump scares. I don't want this to be like a horror game like Phasmophobia or I can't think of any other horror games, but I don't want this to be a really stressful game for people to just play. I want it to be kind of more action, strategy, than anything else. But it's still going to have a little bit of darkness, and a little bit of just brooding, type of tone, I guess. This guy just wants to say hello. So yeah, I'll definitely be very happy when these zombies get some love. And you know what? It might be this week. Might be this week that they finally make a comeback. Because every time I do one of these, I say something like, "What am I gonna do this week?" and then I just flagrantly disregard it. So I probably shouldn't even set an expectation, even though I don't think anyone really cares that much yet. Anyway, but I have a feeling that might be the week of the zombie. God, I hate this texture right here. Can't wait to fix that. I'm probably gonna do that as I get off of here. So gross. I'd also like to establish a more clear color palette and kind of just have a more centralized design document. I started to write out like sort of the setting and backstory, for lack of a better term, for the game. And I haven't resolved some important things about it, but I do feel like I have a much better understanding of where this game is going. And one of the things that I'm pretty much set on at this point is, this game takes place inside of a dream or nightmare. And it's the dream or nightmare, depending on what you want to call it, of Milo. And you're sort of a person or a figment of this person's imagination, and you're basically fighting a literal nightmare. And you might think, well, okay, I mean, that sounds great, but like, what 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 would actually make this characteristic of a nightmare other than it's like spooky because there's ghosts or whatever? And to them I say, one of the things that I'm introducing is items that kind of play off of the whole idea of it being in a dream. One of the items that I'd like to have is something called, like, hand in warm water or something. Or I'll name it something that's more like majestic, like a mighty scepter would be, like the hand of warm water or something. Kind of like the holy water sprinkler in Diablo. So it's a play on the fact that people put people's hands in warm water when they're asleep and make them pee their pants. So I thought, if you could score an item in this game called hand in warm water, well, maybe the level would start to fill up with water. Maybe a couple inches, maybe up to here, maybe higher. Maybe they'd be different tiers. And when the water would rise up, it would have an impact on players and the monsters alike. And depending on the types of zombies or monsters that are spawning, there might be some that move faster in water, there might be some that move slower. I don't know, there might be some abilities that work better, like, I don't know, maybe there's some electricity attack that, you can use the water to conduct the electricity from your attack. And that raises questions, well, what about friendly fire, or maybe you can get to higher ground and use it on the water below. There's a lot of freedom, but the point is that I'd like to introduce things that play on that whole dream concept. And I don't have too much yet, but things like dream catchers come to mind. Those are things that I had when I was a kid. Like those Native American dream catcher things. I was kind of like obsessed with those. Trying to think what else. The movie Inception was kind of interesting. I mean, I watched it again recently, actually, and I kind of thought about this earlier. It's kind of a silly movie, but I really like the scene when Leonardo DiCaprio is stabbed by his wife, or his deceased wife. And it's like it's like the subplot in that movie where Leonardo DiCaprio keeps visiting his wife in the dream, and it's like a big no-no, I guess, if you're like a dream architect or whatever those people do. But he keeps doing it, and as he's giving that young girl, that young lady, that tour in the dream world, she comes up and just like straight up just stabs him or the girl he's with or something. And I really like that. I totally lost my train of thought, but I like the idea of sort of playing with the line between reality and dreams. And I think that the fact that it takes place in a dream is something that wouldn't work as well in a movie, because it sort of takes away the grounded nature of it. But in this, I don't think anyone really cares. I mean, it's just going to be you're in control of the character. I mean, regardless of where it takes place or what, like, you're still going to be chased by zombies. It's still scary. So you don't really need it to be grounded in the same way. But I think playing with the concept of dreams and how they can have an impact on itemization and the way the world reacts to your decisions and I think that's pretty cool. You know, like for example, if you rolled, you know, the hand in warm water item that fills the water with, or fills the level with water, uh, you know, you might spin again and get a monster to spawn that's really good at swimming in water or something. You know what I mean? So there's also, this is also an opportunity to play around with risk and reward and give players you know, a real sense of that they need to pay attention. They need to stay on top of it, you know, or else they're going to be killed, or they're going to be uh, either by a zombie or by the level, you know, artificially, you know, making the game harder. But if they had just not, you know, rolled the item or used the machine, then they'd get off scot-free. You know, it's just like, it's little things like that that I think are really fun about games. And yeah. Oh my gosh. I had no idea that zombies were getting up here. That's interesting. I had no idea. I'll definitely have to fix that. They must be spawning. Where are they spawning? That's not right. Freeze rendering F or right. Right, okay. There we go. So that's so interesting, I guess. Spawn point's down here, so that makes sense. It just doesn't acknowledge the height. It just says this is walkable space, or this is, you know, spawnable point, and this is, so it just jumps up there. What I'm doing right now is I'm hitting F, and what that does is it's called freeze rendering. It's basically just freezes a frame, and you can sort of look at what the renderer actually rendered in that frame, which is pretty cool, because you can kind of get an idea of like what is actually going to be computed on any given frame if I look in this direction. And then I can move my camera out and say, okay. Do a snapshot here, around here. Okay, interesting. Look down there and then look back up. So, I don't know, the roof's gone. But yeah. I guess that's pretty much it. Hopefully next week I'll have some more things to show off. I'm sure I will. And yeah, have a good week. Drink lots of water. And stay creamy. And yeah, see you next week. Love you. Bye.